A hunter was found dead, murdered with his own gun, a farmhouse left to rot, his family having met the same fate. But with no clear motive to carry out such a grim deed, who could possibly be the killer? On a totally unrelated note, at Research Sector 71 resides SCP-1793, a small and adorably fuzzy male Oryctolagus cuniculus, or, in layman's terms, European rabbit. Surrounded by several gravimeters and housed in a mammal containment cell, such high security regarding SCP-1793 could be taken as a bit overkill, as nothing about the bunny seems particularly unnatural, but SCP-1793 is no ordinary rabbit. On the surface, nothing seems particularly striking in regards to the creature. Thought to be around 9 years old, SCP-1793 is aging at the same rate any normal rabbit would, but due to an unfortunate structural heart defect known as pulmonic stenosis, and to prevent any significant containment failure, SCP-1793 has been assigned its very own veterinary practitioner. Alongside a selection of varied fresh vegetables, SCP-1793 is provided with a veterinary-approved rabbit mix due to its condition, as well as the appropriate medical and nutritional supplementation it needs to keep healthy, or at least as healthy as it can be. Spend any amount of time observing SCP-1793, however, and its unnatural attributes begin to rear their head. Though deemed non-harmful in nature, SCP-1793 possesses the ability to, through spatial anomalies, manifest material objects at will. A pattern in the objects created is yet to be distinguished, but so far, site staff have witnessed the rabbit craft a large array of items, from foodstuffs to electronic devices to cultural artifacts to carrots. Because, duh, of course. Despite looking normal in nature, items created by the uniquely gifted SCP-1793 aren't completely ordinary. Similar to how SCP-1793 presents itself in an unexceptional way, objects manifested by the cuddly little rabbit are said to emit Cherenkov radiation while being produced, found to be in the purple-blue range of visible light. However, the spatial anomalies SCP-1793 whips up contain the exact same gravitational mass as the items they appear to mimic, and ultimately have been concluded as non-harmful. For example, if the rabbit wants to spawn a parsnip, the parsnip manifested has the same weight as a real parsnip, grown by real farmers and not by a cosmically gifted bunny. Different items have different processing times. Rabbit-spawned electrical or mechanical devices take around 15 minutes to produce, whereas foodstuffs such as beetroot, rutabaga, or even a cheeseburger, if he really wanted to treat himself, takes around 30 minutes. Interestingly enough, mimics of cultural items are able to be spawned almost instantaneously. Too bad on the wait time for that cheeseburger. I could actually really go for one. All items manifested seem to be pristine and in working order, and most, if not all times, every item produced leans on the recreational side of things, aesthetically pleasing though not innately needed. It's cool to have a copy of the Mona Lisa, but it kind of cramps the style of the facility. If given the chance, SCP-1793 also possesses the ability to manipulate nearby objects, all without physically interacting with them. So far, changes to already existing items have been small and non-threatening, like the altering of a can label to say lemon lime instead of cola, or giving a computer an extra key. Due to the consistent nature of such creations constantly spawning within SCP-1793's containment cell, observing staff have approved of the rabbit keeping a few select items, albeit small enough to fit within the room without issue. The rest of the items are to be withdrawn from the cell and kept in storage, awaiting proper analysis. Popular items of choice spawned by SCP-1793 are, not surprisingly, food. When hungry and late to be fed, SCP-1793 will manifest its favorite treat, a vegetable, to quell his hungry hankering. But despite their normal outward appearance, foodstuffs made by the rabbit are less than nutritionally dense. Upon further scientific and chemical inspection, vegetables, fruits, and the occasional biscuit spawned by SCP-1793 show higher fibrous content in relation to their real-world wild counterparts. Though not proven, as SCP-1793 is still provided with real food by the facility, it has been determined that if left to its own meal-making devices, the rabbit could not self-sustain off its own munchy manifestations. A years-long occupant of Research Sector 71, SCP-1793 never raised any real cause for concern. Many items spawned by SCP-1793 were even considered a great form of entertainment. For example, the rabbit once manifested a TV without a remote, which would have seemed inconvenient if not left on a fun game show channel. SCP-1793 even spawned a plate of Swedish meatballs, filling the sector with its deliciously aromatic scent, though perhaps in relation to SCP-3008 Infinite IKEA. Staff will never know for certain. Several facility members tasked with keeping an eye on SCP-1793 grew quite fond of the rabbit, enjoying its peaceful and cuddly demeanor, albeit from afar. SCP-1793's personal vet practitioner also approved of its docile behavior and was deeply saddened by the fact that, due to its pulmonary heart disorder, his time on Earth is limited, and he might not live on for much longer. The creature's presence made many members of personnel joyous, or more appropriately, and in this particular instance, happy. But on February 27, 1996, an addendum had to be made, as SCP-1793's behavior grew concerningly odd. On one non-particular morning, an onslaught of never-before-seen items appeared all around Research Sector 71, in rooms, on chairs, in shelves, and on walls. Through discussions with staff, it was confirmed no human could possibly be responsible for the sector's sudden influx of decor, given the amount was too large for any singular person to sneak in. With April being months away, this surely was no Fool's Day prank. After careful consideration and some security camera review, all logical conclusions pointed to one irrefutable culprit: SCP-1793. The detailed list of items spawned within Researcher Sector 71 are as follows. 1 was a set of 3 FV-4034 Challenger 2 main battle tanks, all of which were missing several parts, such as the main gun and its firing mechanisms. Not only were the tanks functionally disabled, something noted as odd, as all of SCP-1793's previous manifestations have been in working order, but they were equally missing their armor. Upon inspection of the main barrel, a discovery of an inscription had been made reading, "Intentionally disabled by the Gillespie 445 Board for Arms Non-Distribution." The second onslaught of items manifested by SCP-1793 were 82 full-size copies of Edward Hopper's Nighthawks, a 20th century painting often detailed as eerie due to the isolated nature of the piece. In the middle of the night, surrounded by a barren United States city, Nighthawks depicts 4 lonesome subjects congregating in a fluorescently lit bar. The subject matter of the piece isn't particularly jovial either, tapping into the paranoia shrouding New York City after the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. Why SCP-1793 spawned not 1 but 82 copies of the piece is still unknown. The only other item spawned by SCP-1793 during the 1996 incident was deemed the oddest of them all: a single, completely normal King Edward potato. Researchers traversed the halls of Research Sector 71 absolutely terrified. None of the manifested items seemed to have any relation to one another, and staff struggled to make sense of the massive collection surrounding them. Concerned, researchers quickly visited the holding cell of SCP-1793 and were instructed to review the containment's gravimeters. Revealed upon inspection was a massive spatial anomaly within SCP-1793's cell, bigger than had ever been recorded before. At approximately 100,000 kilograms, or 220,000 pounds, this gravitational mass constructed by SCP-1793 has yet to be beat, and hopefully never will be. SCP-1793 sat idle in its containment cell, unsettlingly still. With eyes wide open, conscious but unmoving, and in a presumed state of extreme concentration, the rabbit's personal vet practitioner feared that due to such intense manifestational feats, his heart could be at risk of failure. But all would soon be over, as SCP-1793's catatonic state eventually ended at a staggeringly long 47 consecutive hours, and manifested in the process was a single sheet of rough paper to prove it. What was on the paper, however, revealed something startlingly out of character for the once harmless bunny. Not too long ago, in a lone farmhouse near Whitby in the United Kingdom, lived a farmer and his family on a land prime with vegetation, fertile soil, and, most importantly, lots of rabbits. A farmer by day and a hunter by night, the countryman would often brandish his shotgun and head out for an evening excursion, searching for a bunny well suited to feed his family. The man was good at what he did, and he was feared by forest life, bringing back several rabbits on the nightly, sufficient to plate a proper dinner. But this time, the forest, it seemed, had had enough. Dinner was served amongst the family per usual, and the farmer's shotgun hung proudly on the wall. Looming over the table, it was his most prized possession, truly one of a kind, or at least it was, until he heard a thump-like knock on the house's entryway. At such a late hour, the huntsman cautiously opened the door and was met with not a friendly visitor, but the barrel of his own shotgun. Turning to check his own wall, but realizing the weapon had never left its place from above the table, the farmer was perplexed until he could think no more. In a fit of rage, the perpetrator shot the huntsman dead, his family soon to meet the exact same grisly fate. Due to the loud nature of the gunshots, authorities were called to the scene, but to everyone's dismay, no suspects were found. After a sweep of the farm grounds and due to the odd nature of the situation, members of the Foundation's mobile task force were called on to investigate the area. Through inspection, the only anomaly of note was an exact duplicate of the huntsman's gun, the same one that hung over the dinner table, right down to the nicks and scratches on the barrel. But shortly after this revelation, another oddity was discovered. An idly sitting rabbit, found not quite too far from the farmhouse, wearing a collar with a low-powered radio beacon attached. Not quite sure of the correlation between the creature and the events that transpired at the house, the MTF was quick to take him in, preferring not to take any chances. He has been detained within Foundation walls to this very day. For a long and uncomfortable while, the farmhouse murder was nothing more than unsolvable. No fingerprints, discernible motive, or any other incriminating evidence left at the scene. Due to being found in such close proximity to the murders, theories were to be had over SCP-1793's involvement in the case, but nothing ever served as concrete. After the 1996 incident at Research Sector 71, however, those doubts over the Happy Bunny's involvement were about to change. During its 47 hours of deep concentration, SCP-1793 conjured the aforementioned rough piece of paper, detailing the events that transpired at the farmhouse on that one grisly night. The letter reads as follows.
I am sorry for the confusion. It is difficult to concentrate. It is difficult to write as well. I am a rabbit, you see.
Amongst the 3 tanks, 1 potato, and 82 copies of Nighthawks hung about the sector walls, researchers continued reading, perplexed. Having never thought amongst its many other abilities, the rabbit was capable of written communication.
I am sorry for the farmer. Family for a family, I thought at the time. Seeing him eat my wife and son, you can understand. After the mess, I met a man. Well, he wasn't a man. The 3 heads gave that away. He gave me the means to live out my waning days in comfort before my weak heart gives out. He told me he would find suitable wardens to care for me as I die. I don't know if the criminals should choose their punishment, but from what I'm told, this is the nicest prison for those like me. If you ever see him, tell him I say thank you before you lock him away.
At the bottom of the page lay one more sentence.
Oh, and thank you for the carrots. They never do get those right.
After all these years, a confession was made, and by a rabbit, no less. Angered by the slaughter of his own family, the rabbit had taken an eye for an eye, and now, as quick as it happened, the farmhouse murder could be put to rest, at least within top-secret Foundation walls. Though for years he made the staff smile, the Happy Bunny was not so happy after all. Well aware of his heart condition and impending doom, SCP-1793 wanted to be captured for his guilty crime, living out the rest of his days in the Foundation rather than traversing the lonely woods he and his family used to dwell in. Unbeknownst to authorities, the culprit had turned himself in from the very beginning, and the truth was just under their noses, and now, at least, in written form. SCP-1793 remains in Research Sector 71 to this very day. No other incidents similar to the 1996 event have been reported, but many staff members prefer not to recall the details, as ridding the building of the mass amount of items SCP-1793 manifested was presumably a tedious nightmare, except for the potato, of course. Fortunately for Research Sector 71 staff, SCP-1793's behavior remains steady and peaceful in nature, albeit a bit inconvenient at times, mostly due to its conjuring things outside its cell. Manifested items are back to the usual kind. Small cell phones, root vegetables, picture frames, exercise equipment, no more cheeseburgers, but maybe someday. All manifestation times have remained steady from when first documented as well, and the rabbit shows no outward aggression or intent on harming anyone it comes across. However, due to the 1996 incident and the confession to the farmhouse family murders, SCP-1793 has been officially classified as Euclid. SCP-1793's personal veterinary practitioner assumes that SCP-1793 does not have much time left to live. His heart condition worsens by the day, but at least his closing moments on Earth will surely be comfortable, somewhat cushy, and full of carrots, all the while behind containment walls. Whether or not SCP-1793 still guiltily dwells on the crime it committed is unknown, as no new printed letters have been conjured, and any further attempts to communicate via written words have been null. However, it does seem to be satisfied with its choice of incarceration. The SCP Foundation has yet to track down the three-headed anomaly the rabbit detailed in its written confession, the one that coaxed SCP-1793 to turn himself in to be detained. The staff is perplexed that the undocumented creature is aware of the Foundation's existence, and, as of now, has deemed this level of awareness as a potential threat. The whereabouts of this creature is unknown, but staff are doing their due diligence to make sure it is found, starting its search around the farmhouse where presumably it met with SCP-1793 for the first time. A happy bunny. Happy, or so it seemed. How long SCP-1793 has left for this Earth is ultimately up for his waning heart to decide. Why he doesn't just manifest a new one for himself is, for now, untold. Now go check out SCP Professor Kane Pathos Crow Explained, and what SCP-529 Josie the Half-Cat does during SCP-5000 for more.